Welcome to the Be Still, Be Aware series, where nothing is off limits. I'm your host, Claire Foord. Let's talk. Hi, I'm Claire Foord. Thanks for joining us for the Be Still, Be Aware series. Today, I'm joined by special guest Bianca Kalogerakis. Some of you might know her as the yoga influencer, Bianca Tarr. She is going to be taking us on her pregnancy journey. Some of you might know her story, but it's one that definitely will pull at the heartstrings. We are going to be talking about stillbirth. But we are going to be also talking about intuition, trusting your gut and that little voice inside you that might say that something's not right. And how to be assertive in pregnancy and the key top takeaways that you can use in your pregnancy to keep yourself protected and your baby safe. So, let's talk.
Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this series is recorded and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
Hi, I'm Claire Foord, your host for the Be Still, Be Aware series. Thanks for joining us again today. And I am joined by a fabulous woman who some of you probably have known from previous stories that we have done before, but Bianca, who is a mother, a yoga facilitator and all-round beautiful soul. So Bianca,
hi.
Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
I think those that have listened to your story before have got a really good insight into your journey this far, but I really wanted to go back and just look at it again, if you would indulge us, because there'll be people that haven't heard your story, but will gain a lot from it. And it's one very much of a lot of, ups and downs. It's a very tumultuous journey, but one that we can all learn from, because I think your beautiful children deserve to live on through us all and in their memory that we get to have of them through you. So can you take us back to, pre-pregnancy or conception with, your beautiful Luna? Let's talk about Luna.
Yeah, okay, so we were not planning the pregnancy with Luna. We very quickly, deeply fell in love. And when we spoke that one day we'll have children, and then when we did fall pregnant, it was just kind of a no-brainer. It was like, absolutely, we love each other, let's do this. I had a pretty cruisy textbook pregnancy. I did loads of hot yoga, and I taught, and I felt great. I felt the normal things like morning sickness and tiredness, but as far as, I guess, what you would consider a perfect pregnancy, I was travelling that way. With Luna, I was fortunate to get into the special midwifery group. So I got that real continuous care. But for me, it was more, I wanted this real natural birth. I wanted to be that pregnant woman that's riding a unicorn with my tits out, and
Fabulous.
like I've just got this little child following along. The dream, right? Doesn't every mother think that?
Yeah. Everyone thinks that that's the normal, right? That it's all, rainbows and unicorns. And
literally.
Our bodies just do what they're meant to, and our babies arrive, and how lucky are we?
And perhaps we can call that naive, that I thought it was that simple. That you can, like the African women do what they do is standing up, and I was like, I'll do that. I'll do the water. I'll do it all. It'll be easy. I'm not scared of the pain. That was my biggest thing, right? Is oh my God, I'm not going to be worried about the pain of birthing my alive, healthy baby.
Absolutely.
So I had this really wonderful textbook pregnancy, and I really relished in being pregnant. On all its changes, and I went full natural, like didn't dye my hair, no nail polish, no coffee.
How'd you go with that?
Oh yeah, really hard.
And for those that are listening, if you're pregnant, you can have up to 200 milligrams of coffee, caffeine a day. So that's chocolate coffee.
And that could be like 5 instant coffees as well, totally. Depending on what's your flavour.
But still, I get it. The whole, you went, whole hog. Be as safe as possible. I want to, have the
I wanted to be the natural
depiction
depiction of what I considered was a mother at that time. Again, perhaps that was naive. From about, I reckon, 20-ish weeks when we started getting movement, I kind of got this weird inkling, this doesn't feel much. And in the back of my mind, I always said, well, it's going to get stronger and then I'm going to see these crazy kicks. And I really held on to the fact I had a posterior placenta. And they say when the placenta's more hidden at the back, the movements are stronger, the sooner you can feel them and they're more visible. So I was really holding on to that. And my mum was also telling me about how I would be punching her in the ribs and all of that sort of stuff when I was in utero in her belly. So I guess I think around 26 weeks, I began my complaining, you could say, where I just started to constantly ask, am I feeling enough movement? And I would get certain comments being like, you know, we used to do count kicks and then we don't, but how many kicks are you getting and how often do they move in an hour? Do they move after drinking something sugary? And it was very much yes and no. Yeah. It was like sometimes yes, sometimes no. But when I would sit down and I'd sit with her, obviously we didn't know it was a girl while I was pregnant. We kept that one a surprise for Luna. But when I would sit with her and I would get some movement, I did live a very busy lifestyle and, you know, I thought maybe I was just too busy to feel movement. And I got a lot of reassurance from my midwife that it was okay, that I'm going to birth beautifully, I've got a great body for it, I'm already a beautiful mother, and all of that stuff that I wanted to hear because I was riding my unicorn with my tits out, ready for my water birth. Simple as that. At about, I think we were around almost 34 weeks. Movement prior to that was there, but it wasn't strong. It was quite, almost felt like weaker movements, longer, big drawn out breaks, and you usually rely on drinking orange juice or doing something, and I would get movements from her. And it was very, very sporadic. The day I called up, I happened to get my step-in midwife, and she got me to come in straight away. She was like, let's just do a scan, it's all good. And mind you, prior to this, that night, when I was pregnant, I woke up at about, I think, 3 a.m. And I woke up because my dog at the time was by the side of my bed crying. And in that moment, I just said, the baby's died. And I remember saying that and being like, I can't feel her, like, this is it, she's dead. And I was in this two minds and my body was like, oh, my mind was like, Bianca, don't be disgusting, like, do not think like that. I also had just finished.
This intuition was so strong.
It was this intuition.
And obviously and they say pets have this sixth sense as well, that is there to care for you.
Yeah, and this dog is like.
Another.
It's not a dog.
Another being.
It's a little angel covered in fur that lives in my house. And I remember thinking that and being like, don't think like that, go back to sleep. And then obviously that morning we started the orange juice, get the baby to move saga. I went to about lunchtime until I finally got the balls, because in the back of my mind I was like, it's all good, they've said it all good. I called up yesterday. I called up the day before. I can't just keep calling. She'll eventually move.
So you had called and said, so it didn't feel right. You said it wasn't
and it
weaker.
was things like, just see how you go over the weekend, like give us another call.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, there was never a like, don't call, or there was never a like, you're fine, but it was this weird kind of left me in the lurk of like, well, I'm already calling, I'm already concerned. If you turned around and said, do you want to come in? 99.9% I would have said yes. I said, yes, can I come in? Because I wouldn't have said no to that. So, but because that was never, I guess, prior given to me as an option, I didn't think I needed it. I thought everything was fine. It wasn't until I got my step-in midwife who was like, yeah, come in, let's just do a scan. I didn't feel any movement in the car. There was this dark, heavy cloud following me. But it was my first time pregnancy. I was like, no, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. No one talks about this. You have to be sick and living in the 1800s for your baby to die. That's literally what I thought. I thought we were going in to get a scan and little baby girl would have just been in a funny position, and as soon as we hooked her up, she would have been moving like crazy and we would have went home happy family. Back on my unicorn. I got the scan and my step-in midwife couldn't find the heartbeat, but she was so kind and she was like, oh, I'm sure it's just the machine, let's just get someone else to do a full scan. They took us into this, you know, real dark, sterile room. There's a lot of silence that the medical providers give you during this time. It's like they think they're being helpful by not being vulnerable and showing you that they're human and that they're feeling, but they just become quite silent and weirdly professional. So already I'm stressing at that point, and
not really knowing what was going on.
Not knowing what was going on. And then we had this moment where everything went silent, and without saying anything to me, they just turned off the machine, and then they took their time to, I guess, position themselves closer to me and let us know that there was no heartbeat. That didn't make sense. Like, what does that mean? Is my baby dead? Is my baby alive? Is it the heartbeat going to start turning on? It was really confusing. And they said it looked like your baby then has passed away. With Luna, I remember being in serious disbelief. I also carried this weird guilt, like I was ashamed that I was carrying this dead child. It was really heavy. Then we went and got put into a room to get another scan, which took so long. And the other scan was just, I guess for them, I wasn't aware of it, but now I look back on it, they just wanted to see if they could see a reason why she had passed. So we went and got a 3D scan, and that's where we got told we were having a baby girl. So that was pretty horrific way to find out that that's the gender of your baby. From there, it gets quite blurry. It was going home that really shocked me. It was like go home and sleep on it almost feeling, and that was quite confusing. Obviously I wasn't going to sleep, but they give you sleeping pills. So it's like go home, take these pills, get some rest. We came back in the next day. Again, I had this shame. I was so embarrassed if someone had seen me pregnant and I look like that perfect picture, but I wasn't. And you know, it's that clear analogy of like when you're grieving, no one can see it. So when you break your arm, you can see the broken arm. You've got this cast, hopefully a fluoro cast if you're lucky, you know, and everyone can see you're in pain, you've done something. But when your baby's died or when you're grieving, no one can see that. So I just looked like I was happy, and I was ashamed that I even looked that way. So we were the first ones in hospital. I wanted to get there really early. It was a really long, drawn out couple of hours before we decided, you know, to get the labour ball rolling. I had lots of friends come in, family, all really sad faces, crying. It was just completely unimaginable. We took a pill to induce labour, which looking back on it now, again, that was quite odd because we could have just broken my waters and tried the more natural way. Whereas I guess there was this awful pill that caused this horrendous 19-hour labour. At this point, I still had my step-in midwife. I hadn't met her before either until she had to tell me that she couldn't find a heartbeat. She was wonderful though, really supportive. So it was this really horrendous labour that went really long. We never got on top of the pain. It was going both ends. It was, you know, I even think of the pain, and I don't remember the physical pain, but I can distinctly remember the pain that I didn't want to feel. And that was my heart just shuddering, you know. It was just, you don't want to do it. You don't want to do the labour. You don't want to birth your child. And it is such a scary next thought to think, what's next? So I get this baby out of my little home that I was protecting, and then it comes out not here. So it was like so much fear in the whole labour and inducing it and everything, that I guess the pain, even though it was long, it was nothing compared to what I will feel for the rest of my life, right? That doesn't go. During the birth, I remember my actual midwife was there, and at the time that was reassuring because she was my person and I'd only seen her, and it was almost like a family member that you got to connect with and, you know, cry together. She was human. My step-in midwife was human. I did have a lot of, you know, professionals in the room as well. But she was the one that encouraged me to touch my baby as she comes out for the first time. Be the first one to touch your baby. And of course, nothing can really prepare you for that moment of birthing your child and hearing nothing. Silence. It is so haunting. And then when they pass you your baby and there is this lifeless body, this body that looks pink, that looks like it's full and fat and gorgeous and beautiful, but there is no spirit in it. There's no life. And it's this really hard feeling between, it is the greatest love, and every mother knows that feeling. You birth your child. It is the greatest love that you will ever experience, and it is just unimaginable. Like, I always think of this, I go back for a little bit of humour, but that Ryan Reynolds, and he talks about when he had his daughter, and he's like, I would use my wife as a human shield to protect my daughter, and that's exactly that. It's just an unimaginable love. And this love was paired with this unimaginable grief, this unimaginable heartbreak, this unimaginable loss, and it just, none of it seemed right. It felt like this weird dream. And then chuck in all these drugs that I was completely numb. And I was literally couldn't move. We spent as long as they would allow us with Luna. And, you know, a parent, let alone a bereaved parent, a parent has to go through this, is still not prepared for, and, you know, at the time cuddle cots were a thing, but they were not allowed, you weren't allowed to use them 24/7 with Luna. I think it's a bit different now, but every night I had to go give her back to the nurse. The nurse had to put her in the fridge. So every night when I was meant to sleep in hospital, I had to give my baby, my human baby, and put it in a refrigerator. And every day that went past, she started fading. Her skin started blistering and peeling, and it's just morbid. It is, it's true trauma that, you know, something that I've had to constantly work with and unfortunately relive those moments, you know, as opposed to, well, we didn't get the happy moments. So there wasn't this backing. We had a beautiful ceremony, a funeral for Luna, and the support I got was just overwhelming. The amount of people and family and friends, and obviously me being in a yoga community, I had an outpour of love. And it was like, I always, you know, she was this divine, feminine, beautiful being that I got to experience. I got to know her energy, and I felt like this outpour of love was almost an array of her energy, and that she touched all these people. But yeah.
And she absolutely did. I think, thank you for being so raw and honest and I suppose bearing her soul as well as yours. I mean, it is, it's not okay having to birth a baby in those circumstances where you have to give your daughter, your beautiful Luna, back. And I think there is so much in your story around the fact that there was something different, that you know, her pattern had changed. She didn't behave the same way that she was, and you weren't alerted to that being a concern. That you know, you were supported, yes, but the information wasn't there. And yeah, you had this physiological, fabulous, you know,
I was an
unicorn
of health.
Yeah, and
that's how everyone looked at me.
And then to be, and you're right, like, you know, the words that they used, I think I'm, you know, listening to you say, you know, there's no heartbeat, and you're like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Are you going to try and make her live? You're going to bring her heartbeat back? You know, it's this surreal, it's a very surreal space that should never exist, and that you're talking about this, this feeling of shame. You know, that's this, I suppose, the stigma that goes with this.
It's not meant to happen.
And also that the wall that's put up that you described around you, that whilst there was that support, and it sounds like you had an amazing support group and network around you from your friends and family, but that the clinical side was their facade too, because it seems as though they don't know what to say either.
Yeah, so
there's something we're so unprepared for. And it's just, and I'm so sorry that Luna isn't here. And she should be and could be, and what an amazing, beautiful soul. And I'm so sorry that she's not here, you know, with us. But I'm so thankful that she got to touch so many people. Like you said, I think that's a really wonderful thing that she's clearly living on through so many others.
Yeah.
And a lot of people heard your story. You were very open, which was a wonderful way to be in a very hard space, particularly in that shame that you describe you feeling. You went on to have another baby.
Yes. Yeah. So
So Atlas.
You know, when they told us Luna had passed, like moments after, one of my first questions was, do I get to have another baby? Like, can I have another baby? And they were like, absolutely, yes. I went in on my unicorn first time pregnancy. Second time I was like, I want white coats. I want all the medical team. I don't want anything like, you know, fuck water birth. I want a live baby. That's all.
So is part of that your belief that there was, you know, your choice of being natural? So that's an interesting shame.
Yeah. So
you know?
I was like, I was so naive to think that this doesn't happen to people like me.
Yeah.
And when I went into this, you know, wanting to try again, with
you went,
Atlas,
okay, I'll just change it all.
Yeah,
I'm
go
the other side.
Yeah, because if I do everything different, it's not going to happen again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we tried. I think we got pregnant within 6 months. We did have 2 early losses. I know miscarriages are also something that evolves around astigmatism. For me, it was nothing compared to a stillbirth.
Yeah.
I felt when I was miscarrying that I didn't understand my body, and I was already stuck in this, why is my body doing this to me? So when I was miscarrying, it was more confusion than like I was losing a life. It was very different for me. But we did have 2, and then we finally fell pregnant. It was 6 months after, which was super soon, and I had lots of bladder complications. So I kind of got pregnant, I guess, with the tail end of a wonky bladder, which made it so much better with hormones. I remember we were on a holiday at York Peninsula, and I did a test in the Port Wakefield toilet on the way back. And, you know, I come back into the car, and, you know, we're bloody having some margaritas as well that weekend. It always works out that way.
Yeah. You'd finally let loose a little bit and you went, hang on.
Literally. Like, and it was, we had our friends, and, you know, we were still grieving. You don't stop grieving, but you also hold on to hope.
That's really interesting that you just said that then. Like, there's a level of a preconceived notion that you can't smile when you're sad.
Oh, yeah.
And that when grief follows
you. It lessens their life.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Like, if you're happy, then you're lessening their life.
But I'm glad to hear that you allowed yourself some moments of sunshine in such a cloud of sadness. I think that's
I had
important.
the support team that brought that as well.
Yeah.
So, Port Wakefield toilet, you know, all chump, just did my pee on a stick. So happy.
That's hilarious.
Got back in the car, and all I said to Lukey was, it's a boy. And I said that, and he was just like, are we pregnant? And I was like, yeah, we're having a boy. I'm telling you right now, it's a boy.
Wow.
He's here. I was like, and I want a beer. I want a fucking beer and a pack of cigarettes, but we're having a boy. You know, I was like, I'm stressed out.
Yeah.
But we're here.
Yeah.
When we obviously went back after Luna's death and had a conversation about what had happened and where to go to next with our obstetrician at the time, with our autopsy results, and we opted to have an autopsy. I wanted reasons why. We found nothing medically. There was nothing. We did get told that it's like being struck by lightning twice in 1 week. If you have an unexplained stillbirth, it's extremely rare to have another stillbirth. I held on to that. I still had fear, but I had way more hope with Atlas. I was so hopeful.
And it's interesting in that you, you know, in that space, you didn't find anything clinically wrong. There was nothing wrong with Luna, but there were signs that something wasn't right, and they were missed in terms of the way she behaved and her movements. And you alluded to that fact, but like you said, it was a yes/no. So I think the reason I want to stop on there is because just because we don't know why doesn't mean that there weren't signs. And so a vulnerable baby, you know, might give you those signs. And I think being heard, even in a continuity of care or when you don't have that scenario, being heard is so important.
Absolutely.
And so you were told, lightning doesn't strike twice. You know, it's so unlikely. You know, you'll be fine.
Words,
you know, but you held on to that.
They go through. I just found that, and not everyone in the medical world is like this. Of course not. There's, you know, people that get it, and there's people that try and get it. I guess there's the two worlds. I just feel like, for someone like me, when they said certain things, I would hold on to them, and I do listen. I do listen to those little remarks or whatever it is. And then I also do notice when you're trying to be standoffish and you're trying to not show emotion. And I noticed that as well, and it's almost like I become alluded to that and also offended to that way of being. Yeah. I was like, why can't we just be humans dealing with an awful thing? Yeah. You know? But so we got told that. I held on to that hope. Again, like I said, I had this fear, but I had more hope. It's going to be okay. Yeah. It doesn't happen. Again, I had a beautiful textbook pregnancy. Of course, I wanted to find out the sex because I didn't. It was awful finding
You wanted
out.
it completely different.
And, you know, it was beautiful when I found out we're having a boy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they do say that sometimes it can be the same gender, that it always happens. So everything felt different. I didn't practice hot yoga, and, you know, there's no studies to say you can or cannot be pregnant. Obviously, there is about heat. Yeah. But I decided to do everything differently. I had the white coats. I was no longer in my white unicorn. And I was really gentle on myself. You know, I did lots of more going in meditation. I had my beautiful birth cards that I read every morning. I really went to an even more beautiful place. I feel like I was in a naive place with Luna, and I went to a more educated and more serene place in myself with this pregnancy. Again, from 26 weeks, I felt funny, and I was, at this point, I was in the high-risk area of the hospital, so I was no longer in the midwifery group, which was fine, I didn't want to be. But during my appointments, I didn't get that same person. I got an overlooker, but I didn't get the same person.
So the continuity was gone, but the new environment was created. This different, just a different,
and
you know,
it was
environment.
strange. It was like good and bad. I felt like I didn't have someone to know me, and it's like there was this instinct behind me that I feel like I need to get to know someone so they can understand me and be my advocate better. So again, at 26 weeks, I brought up I'm not too sure I have a pattern. And I got told that perhaps your baby's pattern is they don't have a pattern. Great. That's an awesome thing to say to a mother that's previously lost a baby. You know, so I know. So I went home with this, okay, Atlas doesn't have a pattern. So there would be days that he would move, and there'll be days that he wouldn't move. He was stronger than Luna, 100%. I felt him, I saw him move more, like other people could touch my belly and feel him. So I was reassured in that sense when he was moving. Yeah. When he wasn't moving, I had this dark, glooming cloud that I didn't realise, again, was instinctual over me. At the time, I got told that it's very normal to feel nervous in your second time pregnancy. Everything's going to be okay. We got more scans, not a lot. We didn't get offered the privilege to do CTG, even though I asked, but it was said too soon in a pregnancy. And even the thought of going into hospital early on bed rest wasn't an option. Yeah. It wasn't even brought up. Everything was going to be okay. I continued to complain. We had a home Doppler at the time. You know, I did everything. I was grasping on anything that could help me be more controlled in the situation, because I was not in control with Luna, not at all, especially the outcome. And I don't think anyone's really that in control when they're pregnant anyway, like morning sickness, all the feelings. Yeah. Every blood test always came back normal. I didn't get any extra blood tests or anything. It was all pretty, again, textbook pregnancy treatment, just with a couple of extra scans. Again, around 31 weeks, we got a growth scan and we had a little dip. We weren't getting growth scans often, and they don't really go by a growth scan until they do another one in at least a week's time, at least a week, because a baby needs time to grow. I get that. We did have a little dip, and I remember saying, the movements feel different. At this point, my caregiver was doing an ultrasound and was waving the wand and said, well, he moved then, do you feel that? And I was like, not really. And they was like, well, he's moving spontaneously, he looks good. I went home with, okay, he looks good. The next day he was super busy. I remember I went to aqua aerobics and I was like, whoa, he's moving so much.
Behaving very differently to what's normal.
Behaving very differently. The following day, I had a dear friend come over who had also lost her daughter at around similar time to Luna, and we had a beautiful lunch together and we just spoke about our girls. And then he wasn't moving. And I remember being like, oh, this is weird, but I did get a scan 2 days ago, he was fine. They also said everything's okay. And his pattern is he doesn't have a pattern. So some days he has a feeling and then other days he's not. So I was
rubbish.
Like, this is normal that he's not moving, but yesterday he was erratic. That night I was like, let's go for a walk. And I was walking around the dog park and I think I got a little movement. When I look back on it now, I think he may have just gravity flopped to one side, so it wasn't true movement. When I got home, I was making chicken burgers, and mind you, I haven't, actually no, I probably have eaten one chicken burger since, but I've never made them since. It turned into quite a trigger, which is something you don't realise unless you're grieving what becomes triggers.
And the trauma,
The trauma, I sat down on the couch and, you know, I've said this to you before, but the only way I can describe it is I was like, could see and feel this vibrant gold cord, and in seconds it snapped. And I knew in that moment he was gone. I wasn't crying, I wasn't sad, I just turned to Lukey and I was like, he's dead. Atlas is dead, the baby's dead, he's gone. And I was angry, and he was like, oh, babe, calm down. It's all right, let's just get the Doppler. And I remember sitting on the couch being like, you're not going to be able to fucking hear his heartbreak, he's dead. And we couldn't find it. And we called the hospital, and it wasn't like, hey, can we come in? I was like, we're coming in, my baby's dead. You told me this isn't happening again, I'm coming in right now. We got escorted into the exact same room, the exact same room. Obviously, I guess they wouldn't have known that. That, you know, we found out Luna had passed, and they did the scan and they did the whole silent, turn the machine off, and I was infuriated. I just remember gripping onto the hospital bed and being like, you all told me this wouldn't happen again. This is not meant to happen. This is not happening. And I remember quite angrily asking for my obstetrician. It was a couple of days ago. He was like, it's all good. I don't know where he was, but he made his way there. Like he did mention, you know, during a scan that when he was looking to see if he could see why Atlas had passed, he did mention, you know, I'm struggling to look you in the eyes, because he was aware that he told me a couple of days ago it was okay. And, you know, at the time I remember being like, that's human, thank you for being a decent human in this point. But looking back at it now, I'm like, oh, I wish you could have let me just be the grieving one and not turn this into you. Like, I don't give a damn what you're feeling or what you're struggling with, because my baby has passed away. That's more important and horrendous at the same time right now. I knew the drill, what was about to happen. And I wanted to go home, and I wanted to go home because my dog was locked in the laundry when Atlas passed. And I remember being like, he couldn't tell us, I need to go back, and he needs to smell me, he needs to hear that he can't hear the heartbeat. He was, again, like my angel fur baby that lives in my house. I had to see him. And I went home again, same thing, chuck you some sleeping pills, go home, come back tomorrow. Weird, sick, Groundhog Day, next day, literally same room. But this time I knew what was happening. I knew the silence that I was about to experience. I knew somewhat of what labour was like, birthing a baby that doesn't have energy, that you have to push, that they don't get to energetically just move through the birth canal. I knew what was happening. I opted not for the pill this time. Again, I knew better. I was like, you're going to break my waters if we need to. But I actually got my Chinese doctor at the time, who is just a saint, and he came in and he put me in labour. So I was close to 32 weeks, and he was able to put me in labour within an hour. And I was in full-blown labour. I had my 4 best friends in the room with me, and even though it wasn't the birth that I wanted, it was like partly the birth that I didn't get for Luna. It was this womanly, I am part of this earth birth that I got to experience, and because I had my friends in the room, I wasn't doing it for me, because there was no me at this point. I was done. I was just angry, and all I could see was red and pain, and it was just unimaginable. I couldn't cope. But they were there, and I wanted them to see him. I wanted them to see me birth. And I wanted them to, relish in this idea that we're women and we're mothers together. The labour was much shorter, I guess, because it was somewhat natural. And I pulled him out. I actually remember, I was angry. I was sass queen in Atlas's pregnancy, and he brought that energy. It was quite a masculine energy when I intuitively think of him. And I remember kind of pushing the midwife's hand out the way. I've done this before. I'm going to be the first one to touch my baby. And I helped pull him onto my chest, and I knew that there was going to be no life there. I knew that he would have looked alive, and all he needed to do was open his eyes and scream. But I already knew that wasn't going to happen, because I knew that something somewhere was missed. Someone fucked up. And when I held him, I took a moment not to be angry, and just to be in love with him, and to look at him, and he was stunning. He was so gorgeous. He was this beautiful boy, and I know that he got robbed of his life. I feel like he should have been here. And I felt like that the whole time, his pregnancy. He was meant to be here, and he fought hard. I know he would have. And perhaps I look back on Luna, and Luna was so divine, and almost this outer world being that she carved a path. But for him, he was not meant to go that way. He was meant to be here. I was somewhat swallowed the pill that, yes, I was going to not birth Luna, and she wasn't going to be here alive. But I couldn't swallow the pill with him that this was the reality. So I just had to love him as much as I could in that moment. Again, all my friends were there. They all got to see him, and of course, as you can imagine, everyone was bawling. Everyone was silent. It was.
And you were broken.
I was gone, completely gone. It was just unimaginable, completely unimaginable.
And lightning did strike twice.
It did. So
And
not
how,
only
how
was
dare somebody say that? That's
not only
was
was I dealing with this again, but I felt like the most unluckiest person in the world. I felt like I was not good enough to be here, that there's something wrong with me, and no one knows what's wrong with me, and everyone just looks at me like I'm so healthy and I'm epitome of health, blah blah blah. But I felt so far from that. And I was like, maybe I must have been Hitler in my past life. You know, like I was a really bad person and this is my karma. So all this like, you know, thoughts that it wasn't meant to be was awful and really ruminating in my mind.
That is a lot to bear on top of already so much grief and pain and trauma.
Yeah.
This self-blame, which I think is so unfair, but also unwarranted. But you also weren't allowed to be that. You describe it when you talked about the doctor saying, you know, I can't look in the eye, and even in the way that you talk about how you were so giving of yourself and your children to others. I hope that you know, and I'm sure you do, but you're an amazing mum, and what an amazing woman to have birthed in such glory, and own that, even with so much hatred, pain, anger, grief, trauma surrounding you. I mean, that anyone could be forgiven for being so broken that they just couldn't do it. I mean, my goodness. That is so unfair, and there is way better words for that, but I'm struggling to adequately find the words to describe the utter atrocity that is losing two beautiful babies to stillbirth. It's not okay in any way, and you're right. You know, Atlas was robbed, and you were robbed of Luna and Atlas, and that's not okay. So I wish that the world could have been different for you. And in this, you have powered through, and you can hear the anger, you know, and I can feel the anger in the room with you that you obviously held. It was really interesting. You talk about Luna and you have this sort of peace and serenity around you, and with Atlas there's this real like electric power that you have, and this anger that you so rightly feel.
And like that day before he passed, he was, you know, he was angry himself. He was erratic with his movements. I've never ever felt him move that much, and it was like, you know, it's just not fair. It was like he had that energy and he had that willpower to live, and then something got missed, or perhaps something didn't get heard, or, you know, you can only ever look back and be like, what if? Really, what if we just went in that day, or they didn't let me leave, or, you know, there's always that in the back of your mind.
So what, and I, you know, we are going to talk to you again about the continuation of your journey and continuing on to motherhood and pregnancy and parenting. But in parenting two babies that are not earthside, that is very tough in itself. But you are a beautiful mother, and you do parent them so well and honour them so well in telling your story, and also sharing it very openly through your social media channels and things like that. So I think that is something to aspire to and admire greatly, and I certainly admire greatly. What do you want people to know? What do you wish you had been told, or information that you had? What do you want somebody to be able to take away from hearing Luna and Atlas's story and your story, Bianca?
Yeah, I really believe that the mother knows best. And whether you are the mother and you're aware of that, or you're the caregiver, you should be aware of that. We can have all the data in the world, but always is always wrong. So we're not going to have this. We'll always have someone, you know, that is left of centre, or is a medical mystery, whatever they want to call it. I believe that if the conversation was changed, not that my caregivers were doing the wrong thing, perhaps they've just, you know, done it over and over again, I feel like their wording could have been changed. So when I expressed my concerns, it should be something, they should go along the lines of, I think you should come in for a scan. You know, let's just start there. And then after the scan, say was okay, they should say, how do you feel? How do you feel right now? And then that allows the light to shine on the mother, that she knows she is, that she knows that she is carrying this child, and it gets the mother to tune in to actually what's happening. So it doesn't also leave us this kind of, we give all our faith into the medical world. I'm not saying that the medical world doesn't do amazing things. It does. And, you know, I definitely know that now with, you know, my son that is here. But I feel like it can always do better, and we can always listen to the mother. So it's not a matter of that this is what they should do. This is what needs to, I guess, be flipped on its head, and they need to understand that they need to come from a different point. And all that needs to happen at the end of a conversation with a concerned mother is, how do you feel? Because I know that if that got shown on me and I got that privilege to actually say how I felt, I would have said not good. And then it could be like, would you want to go get some lunch, come back for another scan in an hour? Or do you want to come in tomorrow? Like, why can't we leave it open for the mother to do that? Is it because our medical world doesn't have the resources or the money? Because that just seems ridiculous for me.
And I think also, even the wording you just used then, that I wish I was allowed the privilege of that. Wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't just a privilege, it was just a given?
Yeah, I know.
You know, it shouldn't be something that we are so yearning for, that we literally desire so much, that when we are given an opportunity to speak up, when we are given an opportunity to give our voice, that we consider it a privilege. I certainly consider it a privilege having you here and talking with us, because I think you're right. We need to listen to mums. We need to understand, you know, you are the one who has the power to hold and to nourish this baby. And you talk about that so adequately and with such, you know, beauty, the way that you had, you know, nurtured your babies, and, you know, they were taken from this safe space and into this open world without drawing breath and without crying, into this utter silence in this clinical world. So I think you're absolutely right. We need to talk more openly and allow the conversation to flow better. I think, who knows, we cannot change the past, but perhaps we can change the future for some other families.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be joined again with Bianca as we continue her story, but I just want to touch on the things that she has so beautifully said, that, you know, speak up and allow women to be heard. So if you are a clinician who is watching or listening to this, please ask, are you okay? Do you feel okay? And give women the courtesy of being able to be part of and empowered to be in charge of their care in pregnancy. So thanks for joining us, and to beautiful Luna and Atlas, thank you for existing and allowing your mum to be here sharing your story. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us again next time. Remember, it's never too early to have a conversation, but it really can be too late. If you'd like to know more about Still Aware, the charity that's bringing you this series, head to stillaware.org.